So thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Let me quickly share my screen here. And all right. And so are you able to see my screen based on your end?
Yes, I am.
Okay, awesome. So let me get ready to share this and go from here. Here we go. All right. As stated, my name is Dr. J.L. Adolph. I am a father of four, and I am an avid hip hop head. OG, as the young, as my Gen Z students like to say. And I just want to say welcome and thank you all for being a part of this webinar. First and foremost, I want to thank Ken Scarborough as well as Iman for inviting me to be a part of this powerful program with National Healthy Start Association. You guys are the change agents, and I'm just happy to be in your space. So, with that being said, the subject of my talk is actually DadCypher, empowering urban dads through hip hop therapeutic writing. So, in a sense, I am really going to focus on how to actually strengthen bonds between fatherhood practitioners and young fathers, so their clients. So many of the things that Ken stated, I actually do, but I said for this discussion, I wanted to simplify it and focus solely on how do we strengthen the bonds between fatherhood practitioners and the fathers they serve. So it's important to understand what is a dad cipher. A cipher in hip hop culture is actually a communal circle. It's a space where rappers or musicians or artists and dancers, they get in sort of this communal circle, and it's a space of knowledge and artistic expression. And in this circle, people become strengthened. They strengthen one another through this sort of space of call and response and that sort of thing. And so, how I envision a dad cipher, I envision educators, social workers, people like yourself. I envision you all forming a circle to along with dads to strengthen fathers as well as families as well as community. So welcome you all once again to DadCypher. As the rules are in ciphers, one person cannot dominate the energy. And so, although I will kick this presentation off, I certainly expect you all to engage in this conversation because it's not a spectator sport. It's all about call and response and sharing. So let's get into empowering urban dads. Here we go. So, okay. Okay. Now, before we talk about urban dads, it's important that we have an understanding that urban dads are urban males and they have an urban male experience. And oftentimes, people, maybe those who are outside of the urban male experience, may not know that oftentimes these dads have either dual or multiple personalities. In a sense, it embodies what W.E.B. Du Bois calls double consciousness, when one is aware of who they are internally, but also they are painfully aware of how their identity is shaped on how people outside of themselves perceive them. To get a clearer understanding of double consciousness and this space that urban dads are under, is it's like living under, in a sense, surveillance, so to speak. Jordan Peele made this kind of painfully clear in his movie Get Out, where he described this sort of space under living under surveillance as the sunken place. So For those who may not be familiar with that particular movie, I'm going to simplify and help you guys to get a clear understanding of the warring multiple identities that urban males face and how it impacts their fatherhood. So imagine that you are in a safe space with some of your closest friends and that sort of thing. You're engaging in conversation and you're having a healthy dialogue. Then all of a sudden, an authoritative figure pops up. It may be a parent, it may be a principal, it may be some sort of maybe even a spouse and that sort of thing. You will notice that the conversation changes because that person is aware that they are living under surveillance. So, what does that mean for the urban male in terms of who they are as a dad? Oftentimes, urban males feel that their fathering experience is under constant surveillance. And why would they not? Being an urban dad is oftentimes you're viewed as the secondary parent, the secondhand parent, the forgotten parent, or you're just not necessarily deemed as the necessary part of the co-parenting equation. So oftentimes you are dealing and living under that observer's effects. So how you are being observed affects your behavior. So let's take a look at this and go deeper into this conversation here. So to have a deeper understanding of what it's like to be an urban male, one has to imagine what is it like to not be a part of the mainstream, to not have middle class sensibilities. In a sense, to be an urban male is to be decentered and not considered the norm. Many of the modal urban dad experience is one of being a low income or being a non-residential father. So in many cases, you're talking about individuals who have limited access or who have been denied access to the quote unquote American dream. They are, in a sense, the antithesis of what we call an American patriarch. Many of these individuals have been stereotyped as deadbeats, when in actuality, these individuals may be just dead broke. And so many of these urban dads, when they know that they are under surveillance, will use a sort of cool pose, which is in a sense, is giving a face that I am unbothered. This hostility does not impact me. And so in a sense, this is a form of psychic armor. It's an emotional wall that's built up so one does not have to show the underbelly or their vulnerabilities and that sort of thing. However, this poses a problem for you all as practitioners, because if you are not able to penetrate that emotional wall, you may not be able to adequately meet the father's needs, meet the family needs, and that sort of thing. So, how do we strengthen these bonds? Let's take a closer look. Before we get into how do we strengthen the bonds between fatherhood practitioners and your clients and that sort of thing, we have to understand how fathers have been perceived in mass media. So I'm going to look, when I talk about mass media, I am actually going to talk about hip hop culture, because we know that urban dads and urban males are covered by all sorts of media. But I want to focus primarily on hip hop. And in hip hop culture, what you have found, or what we find is in its infancy, we're talking about the beginning in the early 80s, 90s, and that sort of thing. Fatherhood And urban males and dads were kind of reduced to a triple A stereotype. They were either perceived as addicts or abandoners or abusers. And, and that be with that being said, because they have been perceived in that sort of way, it comes from the particular Reaganomics time period where these individuals face the industrialization. And so Michelle Alexander points out in her text, The New Jim Crow, about the mass exodus of urban dads in these communities. And because it was a mass exodus, many of the artists who were adolescents at the time oftentimes portrayed these fathers in these limited identities of addicts, abandoners, and abusers. So let me go to the next slide. But now that hip hop has reached the regal age now of 51 years old, the art has matured in such a way that it has furnished a blueprint that I believe can help practitioners develop stronger bonds with urban dads. Why is this the case? Well, because the image of fatherhood have transformed from just Bill Cosby and Barack Obama to artists like T.I., Jay-Z, and Drake and Kendrick Lamar. If we read the scholarship of scholars like Fathering from the Margins, Abdel, what she says is that being a father no longer necessitates a complete abandonment of instilled masculine codes. And this makes fatherhood less at odds with street values. What does that mean? It means that in hip hop culture, that trauma is no longer being perceived as a site of victimization. In a sense, trauma that many of our urban males experience is now being perceived as a sort of badge of honor, especially if these individuals are working through it. Also, and another scholar in the work Black Fatherhood in Hip Hop talks about how artists like Rhapsody and Mama Soul are basically blurring the lines between those two warring identities of who Black males are in their private life and who they present themselves to be in the public space. And because these lines are being blurred, once again, it offers and furnishes a space where fatherhood practitioners can develop strategies to connect to their clients. So let's get into it. I call these strategies hip hop therapeutic writing. What that entails are three things. So I'm going to give you a practical strategy that fatherhood practitioners can use. It's a three-step strategy. So please take out your pens and paper, get ready to take notes. So here we go. Hip hop therapeutic writing has three strategies. The first step is we will analyze hip hop fatherhood narratives. The second step is we will challenge urban dads to become intentional by externalizing and deconstructing any false male identities that may be toxic to the family unit. Lastly, hip hop therapeutic writing challenges the urban dads to rewrite their narratives and remix their minds. So let's see how we will do that. The first step is looking at hip hop as a culture. Hip hop, first and foremost, is a culture. It was born in 1973 in the Bronx, BX in the house, an era of deindustrialized urban decay, poverty, crack, and the demise of social services. So in a sense, hip hop functioned, as Chuck D said, as the CNN for urban communities. They were the voice for the voiceless. And so in this culture, which is indeed a culture, we had expressions of art in graffiti. We had expressions of poetry in emceeing. We had expressions of music in DJing, movement with dance, but the most forgotten element of hip hop culture is knowledge. So, what does this knowledge hold for us? So, hip hop, like all music, is therapeutic. The late scholar, Dr. Edgar Tyson, is credited with introducing the term hip hop therapy. And he integrated the genre into his social work and mental health interventions, especially with at risk youth. And also, his protege, J.C. Hall, really looked at hip hop lyricism and discovered that many of the therapeutic lyrics actually combines a lot of different approaches, such as narrative therapy, music therapy, poetry therapy, literature therapy, and cognitive behavior therapy, all within the context of fatherhood songs and hip hop. So, for our purpose and for my discussion, before I get into the strategies, I will be looking at hip hop as a narrative sort of therapy approach. What does that mean? Well, throughout history, stories have influenced how humankind has perceived themselves and the world around them. Pioneered by experts like Michael White and David Epstein, the hip hop therapeutic method, the narrative therapeutic method really focused on how can we empower individuals to heal by taking charge of their narrative. So in other words, instead of one becoming victim to all the stories that have been said about them, how does one become the author of their own life story? So that's what we're looking at here. So here I will begin with tangible, practical strategies to help you all as fatherhood practitioners to connect closely with urban dads. So first and foremost, my first suggestion is to engage in what I call listening sessions of actual hip hop songs that talk about fatherhood. Here's an example.
Cannot hear any of that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't aware that you all were not able to hear it. Well, I do apologize. Look up Rhapsody the Man and look up Mama Soul Manhood. These are two female MCs that spitting bars about what does it mean to be an urban dad, as well as what does that mean to be an urban male along with being an urban dad. So I apologize for that, but that's the only sound one that I have. So, okay. So with that being said, let us get us back on track. So after the listening sessions, I suggest that fatherhood practitioners engage in what I call journaling activities. Imagine being able to listen in on some of these narratives that dads are listening to in their hip hop lyricism, and having these dads beginning to journal, to really begin to use hip hop as a safe space to share some of their struggles and challenges, and how that will create bonds with these practitioners. It can be a space of creative writing. And what I believe would come from it is not only journaling, but also maybe songwriting or the sharing of poetry and that sort of thing. In addition, once you or we have once the practitioner is able to help urban dads to sort of let down their guard and these walls through listening and talking about these discussions, the next step we will look at is challenging urban dads to become intentional by deconstructing any false toxic narrative and externalizing it from themselves. So I call this Operation DEFCON F, DEFCON Fatherhood. What that means is we will, after a period of time, practitioners can help urban dads through this hip hop culture and lyrics to really look at family, community, and media-based stereotypes about what it means to be an urban male and what it means to be an urban dad. And if any of those elements prove toxic, then this is a space to really look at it and to really tease and question and really come to identify what makes some of these narratives toxic, okay? So in this process, over time, the practitioners can challenge their clients to separate their identities from the traumas and social issues that are causing the client's distress. The client must be able to separate themselves from their circumstances. What do I mean by that? Instead of saying, I am depressed, imagine if they use the I am statement and say, I am an individual living with depression. The very acknowledgement of I am as an individual separate from one's circumstances is really one of the beginning blocks to help these urban males to gain some sense of stability with these warring identities between what does it mean to be an urban male and what does it mean to be an urban dad. So in a sense, we're helping them to externalize all that is toxic to the family. Next. How do we do this in a practical setting? Well, I would suggest fatherhood practitioners, you all can do this in one-on-one engagements. Once again, with journaling, with creative writing, and that sort of thing, and let that be a sort of segue into some deeper conversations so that fatherhood practitioners can know what are some of the services that these dads need. Also, I would suggest even doing writing ciphers where maybe you have group settings where dads, if they feel so compelled, can share their journeys in creative form. The practitioners will, in a sense, act as moderators or even editors. And every time an urban male connects their identity to the circumstances, they can call those situations out to help their dads to see that their identity is separate from the conditions in which they are living. Last but certainly not least, after the dads have sort of purged these false narratives out of their system, the practitioner can then use hip hop therapeutic writing to help these dads to rewrite their narratives and remix their minds. How do we do that? First, just allowing these dads to write their own manifestos about who they want to be as dads. This can be in a form of lyrical performance or a song, or it may just be like a declaration of fatherhood. But most importantly, we want to use this as a cultural artifact so that when these urban males face challenges, which they will face these challenges, they can refer back to that manifesto and just use this as an anchor to remind themselves of the fathers that they want to be. Lastly, this can be even used as a segue to help these dads to continue their journey, maybe to talk therapy or music therapy and that sort of thing. So you're probably saying to yourself, okay, well, Dr. JL, I can see the benefits of this program, but how do I get started? I'm not a hip hop head. So what I'm going to do is I supplied you all with your starter DadCypher playlist. And this is a list of some of the latest artists out: J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Drake, Nas, and that sort of thing, to kind of help to get the conversation rolling about what does it mean to be an urban dad? What does it mean to be an urban male? Also, I would encourage practitioners to ask their clients who's in their top 5. You may be surprised on what hip hop fatherhood narratives these your clients are listening to. And hopefully this can help to break down some of these walls and to build closer connection so that dads can have a stable identity, which will create a stable family and stable communities. Last but well, not last, but almost last. If you want more information about how to do this sort of work, you can hit the QR code or email me at dadcypher@gmail. In addition to DadCypher, also DadCypher works with at-risk youth. And in particular, when I'm working with at-risk youth, I help them to, in a sense, to use hip hop to heal through their traumas, to boost their social emotional learning, and to change their social media image to boost their career readiness. And with that being said, I just want to leave you with some literature to read as well. I wouldn't be a good English professor if I didn't. If you want to have books that talk about the discussion that I just referenced, you can read Asha Adil's Fathering from the Margins, an intimate examination of Black fatherhood. That's produced by Columbia University Press. Or you can read the article by Kelly Hay and Rebecca, Black Fatherhood, Hip Hop, and Inner Life. That's published by the Popular Music in Society, volume 46. And with that, let us open up the cipher and get into some deep conversations here. And I look forward to it, so I'm excited. Let's get into this conversation. So I see Brother White, Chris White, has his hands up. Let's go ahead and let me pass the mic to Chris. Go right ahead.
You already know. Thank you so much for that presentation. I thought it was really, really impactful for me and hopefully everybody else. I love journaling because I did it a lot as a young man myself. I thought it was very helpful for me as I was wrestling with some things. How do you recommend we incorporate journaling into our fatherhood program? So we have like group education classes. We work one-on-one with the dads. How do you recommend we do that? And then what if we have dads that maybe don't read or write so well?
Okay, now this is why hip hop therapeutic writing is such a great tool for these type of dads. First and foremost, it's just a space. First and foremost, although I'm an English professor, when I do hip hop therapeutic writing, I don't do any academic assessments. So they're not actually physically turning in their journals. So I'm not checking them for grammar, for comma splices, and that sort of thing. So it's really just a space for them to write. It's a real easy tool to incorporate in any fatherhood program because all you have to do is really set a timer. You could maybe play a video, say, hey, this is the topic. and then just have them set a timer for 2 to 3 minutes and have these dads to write out any, sort of ideas, and you will be amazed at what will come out of this expression, especially when they see men that maybe they respect or look up to sharing their personal traumas and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'd like to add something to that in this day of technology. The concern that you mentioned, Chris, in terms of the writing capability of potentially one of the father, you can do recording now, or you can just do translations now on your phone. And so they can then use that and just sort of download that. And so I would definitely offer a recording as well.
So it's kind of like dictating whatever. So yeah, they could just speak it and then it'll come across the screen. Yeah, Microsoft Word has that as well too.
Yep.
So let me see. I don't know which one had the hand up first, but I'll just go with Ronald White.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? Great presentation. I understand where you're going with it and totally understand the creativity in it and trying to bridge the gap with hip hop. Most of the gentlemen I work with, like the list that you put up, that was a great list of positive hip hop. But my participants listen to DaBaby, Kodak Black, and a couple artists that will probably never make that list. So how is that approach with this new culture of, I wouldn't even call it hip hop, it's rap?
Okay. I'm glad you said that, because in a sense, I would probably say it's important to not shun what these what the younger dads are listening to. In a sense, even if using Kodak Black, for instance, he talks about in some songs, he talks about, like I believe it's Super Gremlin, where he talks about his experiences as a father, but we know that he has had challenges with substance abuse. I would probably say, imagine if by sharing these sort of stories, we can use these as teachable moments to say, well, what are some toxic elements that are being presented as what it means to be an urban male, what it means to be an urban dad. And that can be a space where we can start deconstructing it. And maybe if any dad is dealing with that particular issue, maybe that could be a space where we could say, okay, well, how do we heal from that? How do we separate that and that sort of thing? Really quick with Kodak Black, since he was brought up, really, he is a person that has began to sort of blend his identity with his substance abuse. So I would say this is why it would be important to do those deconstruction exercises to let these dads know that that who they are as an individual does not necessarily, their circumstances should not be associated with their identity. By creating that sort of separation, this could begin healing in terms of figuring out who I want to be as a dad and that sort of thing. So hopefully that'll help. And DaBaby, I think, does talk about being a dad too. That sort of thing. Oh, and hopefully, did I answer your question? I don't want to leave before I go on to the next person.
You definitely did. I agree. Kodak Black, a matter of fact, when he first started, he was considered like a Tupac and was almost a conscious rapper, actually. I just feel like with the agenda of the influence of music right now, we have to pay close attention to where this is going, because that has been a hot topic, as I know you know, because you said you are a hip hop head. So knowing that, what the real agenda is has been a big question with people that are a part of the culture. And I'm definitely a B-boy. So I know you know where I'm trying to go with this.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. And I would say, even if something has some negative connotations to it, it can still be a space for teachable moments, because guess what? Our kids are listening to this music, and maybe as fatherhood practitioners and that sort of thing, we can help them to navigate and really, move around and deal with these topics and that sort of thing. So with that being said, I want to go to Perez, Emmanuel. If you will, please come off mute and let's converse.
Hey, how you doing? So this question is more regarding to the practitioners itself. What advice and resources do you maybe have that? So a lot of my clients, I can't ask them to do anything unless I'm ready to do it myself, and they'll call me out on it. Like they ready, like, oh, you want me to spit a rap? You need to spit a hot 16. And I'm gonna be real with you. I can't rhyme 3 words together. Save my life. I don't think I've ever feel comfortable to like even propose this in one of my groups, because they're gonna turn around like, you do it and I'm gonna butcher it. And then that's gonna build that either will destroy the rapport that I've built with them, or it might put me in a complicated thing that I may not be able to wiggle out of, like socially, right? Because some of these social groups that you establish with guys is very complicated is the word, maybe. But so what advice and resources do you have in to that regard?
Well, first and foremost, I would say the hip hop therapeutic writing is not designed to make you become the new Drake or the new Kendrick Lamar and that sort of thing. We don't want you to spit the hot 16. However, I would say that it's not even necessarily about having fathers to write rhymes. I would say it can be a space where we could just have, or like, for instance, one strategy that I do in my classroom is I actually go to genius.com, and genius.com actually lists all the hip hop lyrics, and it also gives definition. I mean, it gives you the sort of the connotation behind it and what that means. And so you can simply just have a reading of the lyrics and just say, okay, let's use this as a space of discussion. And I would say it's probably a good thing where for practitioners to really show their vulnerability and let down their walls as well. Because as men, this is the biggest challenge that we face. All of us are putting on that sort of mask. So why not use this space? I'm in the classroom with Gen Z, where sometimes they would be like, oh, gee, that's not it. But you know what? They appreciate me putting myself out there. So I would probably say, this is a space where it will challenge the practitioner to get out of their comfort zone and to really, deal with, these complex identities and that sort of thing. So hopefully, I hope that answered your question and that sort of thing. And if not, we can chat offline and maybe come up with some more ideas and that sort of thing.
I'm checking out the website right now, so I did.
Okay, cool. So I don't know. Let me see.
Art Terry.
Okay, Art Terry. Yeah, hey Ken, why don't you do that? Because I don't want to. I don't want to put.
Sure, no problem.
I don't get to somebody. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't
let them chop you up. Yeah, let them chop you up. No, they're good people. Go ahead, Art.
Dr. Adolph, thank you for the presentation. And bro, if you think you are OG, you ought to live a couple of days in my life. Okay, welcome to this club. I want to mention 2 things. First of all, I really appreciated your earlier mention you talked about the double consciousness, and I think somebody in the chat session mentioned it in the same vein as code switching, where I thought there was a subtle difference in what you were saying. I think that the double consciousness piece is about being aware of how you're going to be perceived, yet that code switching piece is much more like changing your behaviors in the midst of those situations and environments in order to achieve a certain goal. So want to make sure we differentiate between that, but also want to applaud you for bringing this forward, because what I have found is that, again, as a practitioner of a certain number of years, it's a great way to allow young people to show their proficiency. It's a great way to allow them to break down the communication walls definitions and barriers for yourself. But even more importantly, I have found it to be an extremely effective consciousness raising activity. As what I like to do is invite these young men, particularly the fathers of young men, to go back and recite these lyrics to their children after they've developed a little bit more of a conscious understanding of it. So again, man, thanks for bringing that to the table. Just wanted to really talk about that code switching versus double consciousness piece.
Hey, I appreciate that. Actually, you know what you brought up about dads doing that with their kids, that's actually how DadCypher was born. Actually, just really quickly, I went through a divorce and was dealing with a negative co-parenting situation. And one of the ways that I was able to keep bonds and that sort of thing was through hip hop. And many times I was like, what are you kids listening to? You know, that sort of thing. And then I began to have them to listen to some of my music. And then I listened to their music. And we really talked about what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a young lady? Because I have 3 boys and a girl. And what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? And what does it mean to be a dad? And that's really how DadCypher was born. Hip hop was a space that allowed me to get into their world, and it helped them to navigate some of the things. And because I had that background in like history and English and that sort of thing, I was able to kind of talk about where some of these things come from.
I also real quick want you to know that those very same things you just mentioned, what's it like to be a dad, a mom, a parent, those are also elements that we incorporate into our co-parenting education courses with a lot of young fathers as well. So thanks.
No problem. Okay, so Ken, who you choosing next?
Kevin, you're up next.
How you doing, Kenneth? Man, I appreciate this. I appreciate this, man. This info, man. And one thing I could definitely share, like what Manuel took the words right out of my mouth, especially with the, with our guys here in the East Side. As a child, in my childhood, I only listened to merengue, salsa, bachata. I was growing up to it, or South American music, and I had no, how you say, as a Hispanic boy, hip hop was not one of my music titles. I listened when I was growing up. But one thing I do say, with the dads that I have in the program here, is that I could relate to one thing in high school is when I listened to "Through the Valley" by a song by Sean James, and that used to, that was the kind of life that I was living at that time, so I could relate to that song, and that was what my mind was at. So I think it's like music is very therapeutic, especially I have a young brother who who writes music. He's into the music industry with rap, and hip hop. So, and then when I listen to his music, I'm like, man, my brother's really speaking. He's speaking his thoughts. He's speaking exactly what he feels. And I think that, this is a way of engaging with the dads in our neighborhoods, and especially in our community, and relating. One thing I definitely like about this is that it relates, and this is a powerful way to engage with the dads in our community, because a lot of our dads in our community, especially young men, are hurt, and they're looking for a way to to cope with whatever it is they're going through. So yeah, and I just wanted to share that.
Oh yeah, and by the way too, I know reggaeton and that sort of thing as well. So I know my Latinx has some hip hop flavor as well as Latinx is a great contributors to hip hop, because when I think about Fat Joe and all and Big Pun, who are still in my top 5, I know that Latin America, Latinx, it definitely contributes. And I think many of our stories and struggles are pretty much, although different, but it's some commonalities between them. So yeah, so that's very dope. So Ken, you're up again.
I think Juan, Ananya.
Yes, thank you. No, I want to say thank you for the topic and being brave to assume the responsibility. Once you understood something, you act to it. So I want to say thank you for that. But I think most of what you were presenting, it goes to every other dad. Uh, I remember going to enroll my kids at their school. This the school is like 3 minutes away from home. Um, I'm the one doing everything, but they and I put myself as the first contact, and they keep calling mom for some reason until I say, "Excuse me, can I see the papers that I filled out?" What's the first contact that I put there? Oh, and they say my name. Okay, so thank you. Oh, I thought I mistakenly put my wife because you constantly keep calling my wife, but she's an hour away, so she's not gonna be able to do whatever you need or you require or you request. So I'm the first contact because I'm the one that is here. So there's certain yet things that people don't believe because they come from experience that they didn't have that father present. They could be there, but they may not be involved, and they may
Correct.
not be there, and that's their experience. But thank you for that. And going back to what Kevin and Emmanuel was saying, I think that when we go for hip hop, we're talking about emceeing. So you're the master of the ceremony. So we may not have the ability to have that beat, in our rhyme, but we can, be the master of the ceremony and expose and read with a different tone and give the tones that are needed to exalt the words. So I think for that part, and back again to the Latin community, we do have a lot of a lot of artists that do hip hop, Spanish hip hop. Right now from Cuba, from Santo Domingo, there are conscious hip hop that can help us to gain that connection with our community. That it's nowadays is really influenced by this young generation is influenced by hip hop and reggaeton and trap and all that music. So thank you for giving us the knowledge that you have been receiving. And no, that's what I wanted to bring up.
Hey, I appreciate it. And I just want to say again, this is, I'm glad you brought up because many people may not realize that being an urban dad is oftentimes a space where you're kind of the forgotten parent. And, it's important that dads have this space. And oftentimes, I believe through creative expression, this may even give these dads some of the public speaking skills to even become bold enough to speak in those schools that ignore us and that sort of thing. Because I too had to go in even with doctors to say, like the doctor would say, when did the mother tell you the last time the kids had a shot? I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm the one who's taking these kids on a regular basis. So, but that's because I felt empowered to do that. I think hip hop develops that boldness. And one quick thing before we get to the next person, I want to give a shout out to Andrew Wayne, who put something in the comments about hip hop has other elements too. So if the dads may not be comfortable, let's say writing and that sort of thing, maybe they feel more comfortable with drawing because hip hop has graffiti elements. Maybe they feel more comfortable with maybe a cultural dance of expression. It's just so many ways to do that. And so with that being said, I know Dr. Easley, Brian, he has had his hand up a long time. So I'm going to go to him real quick.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Adolph, for a phenomenal presentation. This was so enlightening. And as a product of Harlem, New York, and shout out to Kool Herc.
Right? Oh, yeah.
Right. The originator of hip hop. in working with brothers, I want to be able to meet them, Dr. Adolph, where they are. You know, I think that's critical, and I think you emphasize that. But I'm 64 years old, so with generational differences, when we talk about toxicities, do we consider certain language, misogyny? And I'm not labeling all hip hop as having this as part of his lyrics. We know better than that. But do we address that with our fathers in a kind way, again, meeting them where they are, as far as language that they use with their children? Or do we just meet them where they are, and if they use that kind of language or promote what we consider misogynistic lyrics, do we just keep it there? I don't know if my question is clear or not, but I need your help, brother, with that.
No, you know what? I would say this. I would say I think it's perfectly clear. And I will say that oftentimes violence is a direct result of oftentimes people not having a language to deal with conflict. And oftentimes what we will find is that because some artists or even some of our dads may have some limits to their vocabulary and that sort of thing, that they, maybe fall into the 7, words and that sort of thing. But this is where I would say an OG like yourself would be helpful, because hip hop was not created in a vacuum. It was created from literature, from older music. So imagine if we start looking at, let's say, the beat, and it comes from a song from the Stylistics. Imagine if we take that and go back and say, well, this is what these brothers were saying about what it means for a man and a woman to have a relationship. So I would say we use these moments to not absolve these brothers from toxic behavior, but we use these moments to say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but as you become more seasoned into this fatherhood, it's important that you level up. So it's kind of like teaching a kid, how to cook. You may start them out with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and that sort of thing. But now you're like, hey, son, it's time to move on to some omelets, yo. Let's level this up. And so I would say, where you start off may be a really more of a toxic space, because they come in with that energy. But as they, as they develop more and more, I would hope that it slowly begins to build. I mean, it's kind of like how I do with my students. They come in, and then it's like I'm trying to help them to level up. And it's not an overnight process. We're talking about a slow burn here.
Yeah. Thank you, my brother. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.